Go to any U.S. military base on a Sunday morning. You will likely find a chapel led by a chaplain, a commissioned officer of the United States Armed Forces, wearing a military uniform adorned with a cross or a crescent, or drive through any town in America. You will see church signs proclaiming "God bless our troops" right next to "Jesus saves." In the modern American imagination, particularly within evangelical Christianity, faith and patriotism are often seen as two sides of the same coin. Serving God and serving your country are presented not just as compatible, but as mutually reinforcing virtues. The just war theory, the idea that a Christian can and should fight in a just cause, is the default, assumed position for the vast majority of believers today. But what if I told you that this entire framework is a profound reversal of the original Christian position? What if I told you that for the first 300 years of the Church's existence, a period longer than the United States has been a nation, the overwhelming, near-unanimous voice of Christian leaders was one of strict, uncompromising pacifism? What if I told you that a Christian becoming a soldier was seen as a contradiction in terms, a betrayal of the faith? And that a soldier who wished to be baptized was often told he must first lay down his sword, permanently. This is the lost history of early Christian pacifism, and the story of how and why this foundational belief was completely inverted is one of the most dramatic and consequential pivots in the history of Western civilization. It's a story of how a small, persecuted, anti-establishment sect became the official religion of the most powerful military empire on earth. Today, we investigate the shocking, forgotten ethic of the early church. Why did the first Christians refuse to be soldiers? And how did a religion against military service become one of its greatest supporters? To understand this, we must set the scene, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd centuries. Christianity is a small, often illegal, and periodically persecuted minority sect within the vast, complex, and thoroughly militarized Roman Empire. The Roman army was not some distant force. It was the ever-present police, the enforcer of law, the protector of roads, and the brutal instrument of imperial power. For any male convert, the question, "Can I be a soldier?" wasn't theoretical. It was a primary question of civic and professional life, and the answer from their church leaders, from Rome to North Africa to Alexandria, was a clear and consistent no. Historians of the period, like Roland Bainton and David Burkitt, point to a pervasive consensus in the pre-Constantinian writings. The evidence is not ambiguous. Let's look at the Church Fathers, the theological leaders of the time. Tertullian, a brilliant and fiery North African writer from around 200 AD, was perhaps the most explicit. In his treatise on the crown, he discusses the case of a Christian soldier who refused to wear a ceremonial laurel wreath, setting off a local persecution. Tertullian argues the soldier shouldn't have been in the army in the first place. He asks, shall it be held lawful to make an occupation of the sword, when the Lord proclaims that he who uses the sword shall perish by the sword? His most famous argument comes from his work on idolatry, where he directly contrasts the two loyalties. The Lord, in disarming Peter, unbelted every soldier. Can a man engage in the military who is bound by another, more sacred oath? For Tertullian, the sacramentum, the sacred oath of loyalty a soldier swore to the emperor, was indirect, irreconcilable conflict with the sacred oath, the sacramentum, the Christian swore to Christ. You could not serve two masters. But maybe Tertullian was just a radical extremist. Let's look at Origen of Alexandria, a more philosophical and mainstream thinker, writing around 248 AD in his work against Celsus. Celsus was a pagan philosopher who had viciously attacked Christianity, and one of his main charges was that Christians were terrible citizens because they were pacifists and refused to serve in the military to defend the empire. Now, Origen's response here is crucial. He does not say, "That's not true, of course we fight." Instead, he concedes the point entirely and defends it. He writes, "We do not fight under him the emperor, even if he demands it. But we do fight on his behalf by forming a special army, an army of piety, by offering our prayers to God. Origen's defense was that Christians served the empire spiritually as a separate, holy priesthood, praying for the victory of the just Roman armies, but they could not and would not physically join their ranks or shed human blood. This wasn't just the opinion of a few theologians, it was embedded in church practice. The apostolic tradition, an early 3rd century church order manual attributed to Hippolytus of Rome, gives explicit rules for those seeking baptism. It states, "A soldier of the civil authority must be taught not to kill men and to refuse to do so if he is commanded. A military commander or a civil magistrate must resign or be rejected. If a catechumen or a believer seeks to become a soldier, he must be rejected, for he has despised God," the evidence from figures like Arnobius, Cyprian of Carthage, and Lactantius all points in the same direction. The pre-Constantinian church was, by and large, a peace church. The question is why? The modern mind immediately assumes the primary objection was about killing. And this was, without a doubt, a central and massive factor. The early Christians took the ethical teachings of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount with a radical, literal seriousness that is often foreign to modern sensibilities. When Jesus said, "Love your enemies, turn the other cheek, and blessed are the peacemakers," they understood these not as nice ideals for a future kingdom, but as binding, absolute commands for the present. They saw their faith as a new law of love, which superseded the eye for an eye logic of the old world. Killing another human being made in God's image for any reason, even in a soldier's uniform under state orders, was seen by many as a direct violation of this new law of Christ. But for the early believer, there was an even bigger and more unavoidable problem with joining the Roman army. It wasn't just a job, it was a pagan religious career. The entire Roman military was saturated with idolatry. This was the deal breaker. The military oath sacramentum. As Tertullian noted, the first act of a soldier was to swear a sacramentum, a sacred, religious oath, not just to the state, but of absolute loyalty to the emperor as a divine figure, to his genius or divine spirit. For a Christian who confessed Jesus is Lord, this was a blasphemous act of idolatry. To dot the legion standards, the aquila, the military standards, particularly the eagle aquila of the legion, were not just flags. They were religious icons kept in a sacred shrine in the camp and worshipped by the soldiers. Sacrifices were offered to them. They were considered divine. 3. Emperor worship. The army was the primary enforcer and most enthusiastic participant in the imperial cult. Soldiers were required to participate in regular festivals, emperors' birthday celebrations, and sacrifices that involved burning incense to Caesar as a god. For an early Christian, this wasn't a gray area. It was blatant, undeniable idolatry, the ones in the Bible, from Exodus to Revelation, condemns more fiercely than any other. A soldier might go his whole career without killing anyone. He could not go a single pay cycle without committing what the church considered idolatry. So the choice was stark. You could be a Christian, or you could be a Roman soldier. You could not be both. This was the unwavering position for nearly 3 centuries. And then, in 312 AD, one man, one battle, and one vision changed everything forever. The man was Emperor Constantine. The battle was the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, a fight for control of the Roman Empire. The story, famously told by the historian Eusebius, is that on the eve of the battle, Constantine, then a pagan, looked up at the sun and saw a vision of a cross, or perhaps the Chi-Rho symbol, the first 2 Greek letters for Christ. With it, he saw the words Nu Tau Omicron Y Tau Nu Y Kappa Alpha, or in Latin, In Hoc Signo Vinces, in this sign, conquer. This is, without exaggeration, one of the most pivotal moments in Western history. In this single vision, the primary symbol of the Christian faith was completely inverted. For 300 years, The cross had been a symbol of pacifist resistance, divine love, shameful execution, and non-violent suffering. It was the symbol of a Lord who refused to call down legions of angels, who rebuked Peter for drawing his sword, who died forgiving his enemies. In an instant, at the Milvian Bridge, Constantine reframed the cross as a military talisman, a magic sigil for political power, a banner of conquest. Constantine painted the Chiro on his soldiers' shields, won the battle, and became the sole ruler of the empire. He attributed his victory directly to the Christian God. With the Edict of Milan in 313 AD, he ended the persecution of Christianity. Soon, he began to actively favor it, pouring imperial funds into building churches, elevating bishops to high state positions, and making Christianity the preferred religion of the Roman court. The church was stunned. It had gone, in a single generation, from a persecuted, illegal, pacifist cult to the official, favored, and patronized religion of the Roman Empire. This staggering success created an immediate and profound theological crisis. The Church, which had defined itself for centuries in opposition to the world and its pagan military, was now allied with, and increasingly indistinguishable from, the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire needed an army. It desperately needed soldiers to defend its borders against barbarian invasions. How could the Church, which for 300 years had forbidden its members from joining the army, now bless, endorse, and supply soldiers for the Christian Empire? The old pacifist position was no longer just a theological stance. It was now a political liability. It was, in the eyes of the state, treasonous. The Church needed a new theology, and it found its architect. While earlier figures like Ambrose of Milan, a former Roman governor turned bishop, began to lay the groundwork, the key figure who solved the puzzle was the most influential theologian of all time, Augustine of Hippo, early 5th century. Augustine lived at a time when the empire was crumbling. He was writing his masterpiece, The City of God, in the direct aftermath of the shocking sack of Rome by the Goths in 410 AD. Pagans were everywhere blaming Christians for the fall, claiming their soft, otherworldly religion had weakened the empire's fighting spirit. Augustine had to find a way to reconcile his faith with the harsh realities of a fallen, violent world where states, even Christian ones, needed to defend themselves. He did this by formulating what we now call the just war theory. Augustine argued, with great nuance, that the individual Christian must still, in their personal life, turn the other cheek and love their enemies. However, the state, he argued drawing from Romans 13, has a different, God-given responsibility to wield the sword to maintain order, protect the innocent from violent evil, and punish wickedness. Therefore, a Christian, acting not as a private individual but as an agent of the state, could and perhaps must participate in a just war. For Augustine, this was not an act of hatred or revenge. It was a reluctant, sorrowful, but necessary duty, performed out of love for the innocent neighbor who needed protection from a violent aggressor. It was not a good thing, but it was a lesser evil in a fallen world, a sad necessity until Christ's final return. Augustine's just war theory was a theological masterstroke. It provided a framework that allowed Christians to serve in the military with a clear conscience, while still maintaining Jesus' ethic of personal love. This new theology that war could be a righteous act if it was waged by a proper authority, for a just cause, and with the right intention to restore peace, became the dominant Christian position in both Catholicism and, later, Protestantism. It has been the default framework for over 1,600 years. The original 300-year-old pacifist tradition was almost completely forgotten, relegated to small, fringe peace churches like the Mennonites, Quakers, and Amish, who were often dismissed or even persecuted by the mainstream churches for their unpatriotic and naive adherence to what they saw as the original, literal teachings of Jesus. So we are left to the story of a complete 180-degree reversal. A faith that began by defining itself in opposition to the sword became the faith that blessed the sword, carried it on crusades, and now hangs it on the walls of its military chapels. This lost history isn't just a piece of trivia. It reframes almost every modern, heated debate about the relationship between Christianity, patriotism, nationalism, and the use of military force. It shows that the current, dominant Christian support for the military is not the timeless, original Christian position. It is one position born at a specific, pivotal, and deeply political moment in history. And this brings us to the final crucial and perhaps unanswerable debate. Was the shift from radical pacifism to just war a tragic compromise? Was this, as some historians like Edward Gibbon implied, the fall of true Christianity, a catastrophic betrayal of Jesus' radical, countercultural teachings, traded for the price of political power, cultural acceptance, and imperial wealth? Did the church gain the world but lose its soul? Or was this a necessary adaptation? Was it a sign of theological maturity? A recognition that the ethics of a small, persecuted, apocalyptic sect living on the fringes of society cannot be the same as the ethics of a global, socially responsible religion tasked with helping to govern and protect that society. Did Augustine simply find a more realistic, responsible way for Christians to live out the command to love their neighbor in a complex, broken, and dangerously violent world? Put simply, which is the truer expression of Christianity? The one that refuses to fight, no matter the cost? Or the one that is willing to fight in the name of justice? Let me know your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. Was this a tragic compromise or a necessary adaptation? If you found this deep dive into one of the most significant pivots in religious history fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that uncovers the hidden stories and complex evolutions of faith. Thanks for watching.